Good morning. It is my sincere pleasure to welcome you today to Longwood Gardens and to our October edition of our science series. My name is Kate Santos, and I'm the Associate Vice President of the Science Division, and it is my pleasure to be here today to introduce Jason Simpson to you today, our speaker. Jason grew up working on his family farm in Kansas, where his love of growing plants inspired him to study horticulture at Kansas State University. After earning his degree, he joined Longwood Gardens as a greenhouse production intern, and when a position opened during his internship, he accepted. Over the past 21 years, Jason has grown numerous crops and contributed to countless special projects, from hanging baskets, living wreaths, our Christmas floral trees, to hybrid lilies, blue hydrangeas, and cool season crops like digitalis and terkelium. Many of the tree standards that you'll see in Flower Garden Walk through the summer or dotted throughout the conservatories are also crafted by his hand. So he is by far a very, very strong horticulturist. His work has also supported displays such as Lilytopia, Orchid Extravaganza, and so many of the horticultural moments that really define Longwood. When starting out, Jason grew many of our bedding mums, including the single stems and disc buds on display today. But for the past 11 years, he has focused on chrysanthemum cascades, developing innovative growing techniques that continue to advance this extraordinary art form. I've had the privilege of watching Jason at work, and it's truly remarkable to see. His process is one of quiet precision and absolute dedication. Each stem trained, pinched, and guided with an artist's eye and a scientist's discipline. The results are truly horticultural masterpieces that embody both beauty and technical excellence. Jason's expertise in this highly specialized technique is exceptional. There are truly fewer than a handful of people in the entire United States who can do what he does. And in my opinion, he stands among the very best. So you are in for a true treat today as Jason shares with you the mastery of what he has come to learn and cultivate. So without further ado, Jason Simpson.
Thank you, Kate. That might be a little too high a praise. Welcome, everyone. When I say the word chrysanthemum, most people think of garden mums they have in flower beds at home, bursting into color in the fall. Or you buy your favorite at a garden center to pair with jack-o'-lanterns and cornstalks on your front stoop. Some people think of florist mums used in beautiful arrangements. Or maybe your local supermarket, like mine, even sells them with bunny ears for Easter. But you all know, since you've come to see Longwood's Chrysanthemum Festival, so many amazing things can be done with this one plant, Chrysanthemum exmorifolium. They can be grown as a thousand bloom, where the goal is to see how many flowers can be grown on one plant. Ours in the East Conservatory is 11 feet across with 1,364 flowers this year. We can't grow it any bigger because then it wouldn't even fit through the door of the conservatory. They can be kept very small and grown as bonsai, some even being held over for multiple years, like you can see on display in our bonsai workshop. They can be arranged in intricate mum doll displays, as seen in mum festivals all over Japan. We even brought a team from Japan to add this very special element to our Chrysanthemum Festival in 1999. These are all things we're not going to talk about today, just that I address that up front. But instead, we'll be focusing on a group of cultivars that I work with. It's a group known collectively as kengai, or cascades, that are long and trailing and can be trained to all kinds of fun topiary shapes. As you walk around our display, these are the large three-dimensional pieces covered in 1 or 2 inch flowers. I'm going to take you behind the scenes to see the production cycle from start to finish, talking about the art and science that goes into creating our displays and the ways our Chrysanthemum Festival evolves over time. It's a kind of year in the life of a cascade grower. Chrysanthemums are native to Eastern Asia. They're the national flower of Japan, where there are large-scale chrysanthemum festivals across the country. Over the years, Longwood staff has been fortunate enough to travel to Japan to see these festivals, meet, and learn from the masters. This is where most of our techniques come from and have been developed over hundreds of years. Some of our cascade forms are more traditional, And Longwood has also taken those techniques and adapted them to create new forms that we like to see in our displays. We held the first large-scale chrysanthemum display at Longwood in 1924. Our chrysanthemum growers work with our display designer more than a year ahead of time, sitting down with him in August to talk about the following year's festival. He comes to this meeting having chosen which forms he would like to use on which walkway. Based on the color scheme in each area of the conservatory, he has also chosen the cultivar. This meeting is my chance as a grower to assess the design and address any potential challenges I see. For instance, if he's chosen a shorter cultivar for a very large frame, I can ask if it's the color he's going for, can we switch to a taller cultivar in the same color family? If the labor needs seem high, we can discuss the number of forms or displaying things in a different manner. There are some forms we grow every year. We always have beautiful spirals, the great big hanging baskets in the main conservatory, and cloud forms, which our designer says are his favorite. And he'll come to the design meeting with a new idea or two. He might come with a sketch, such as with the mum roping or swag in 2017 and 2018, or a technical drawing with actual dimensions, such as with our umbrella frames in 2021. For the new piece this year, he said, we always grow our double wall standards, but what if we supersized it and had a form made of two spheres sitting right on top of each other with no trunk in between, the bottom larger than the top? And my response was, so, a snowman, which he hated, but he picked a white cultivar, so I'll let you be the judge. Any of these new ideas involve a lot of planning, so when presented with a new challenge, I look at it with a horticultural viewpoint and think, okay, can I make a mum do this? Can I grow the plant tall enough, and with which cultivars? How many plants do I need per container? When and how often do I pinch to get enough branching? And Longwood is very lucky to have an in-house facilities department, where we have 2 metal fabricators, one that works closely with me on the cascade forms. He will look at this new idea from a structural viewpoint and decide how to create the metal form that the plants will grow on. Does it hang overhead, presenting safety concerns? Do we need an attachment point to lift with a forklift or a pulley, or can I lift with handles on the container? How are we transporting it to display, or is it multiple pieces that have to be put together on site? Then together, we come up with a plan and regroup with the designer to make sure it meets his vision. Once everything's agreed to and the design is set, the metal shop gets to work ordering supplies for new forms, and I work on getting cuttings numbers to our propagator, who is also our chrysanthemum collection curator. Our collection is nationally accredited through the American Public Garden Association. There are 220 cultivars representing all 13 classes as recognized by the National Chrysanthemum Society. She cares for 2 stock plants of each cultivar. From those plants, she'll take vegetative cuttings, which is just a 2-inch clipping that gets placed in plug trays of soil and put on a greenhouse bench under a mist system. After 2 weeks, when the roots start to form, they're transitioned off of mist and moved down to my greenhouse in early November. Here, the cuttings are potted into 5-inch pots and grown up bamboo stakes. There are 2 or 3 main things that are happening in the greenhouse during this time. First, chrysanthemums are short day plants, meaning they need a certain number of hours of darkness to produce flowers. Mums are associated with the fall because all those garden mums you have at home flower naturally when the days get shorter. What we do in the greenhouse through the fall and winter is trick the plants into thinking the days are long by running night interruption lighting. If we run our lights from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., that's enough to keep the plants from flowering, and I can get more active green growth. During this time, the plants are not pinched and allowed to grow tall, except for when a crown bud appears. Even though I'm running those lights at night to keep them from flowering, the plant will put on a certain amount of growth, then form a crown bud or a false bud. This may not develop into an actual flower, and even if it did, it's way too early for flowers. There are 2 signs that my crew and I keep an eye out for. On a normal stem that's not setting bud, the leaves up at the growing tip are very serrated or rough around the edges. Once that crown bud starts to form, the young leaves have straight edges and look very strappy. If we don't catch it right away, as the crown bud develops, it acts as a pinch, You can see with the normal growth, we get one strong stem or leader. Once it forms a crown bud, the side shoots really start to expand, and we get a few stronger branches at the new growth. When they appear, we just remove the inch or two right at the growing tip, and the plant goes back to vegetative growth. After a couple of months, the plants have rooted out the 5-inch pot and range in height from 2 to 3 feet. At this point, in January and February, all plants, except the baskets, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, get potted into their final container. Since this is such a long-term crop, we mix our own custom soil. It contains ingredients chosen for their nutrient and moisture holding capacity. Roots need air or pore space, and since these plants will be in their final container for 10 or 11 months, this soil holds up over time and doesn't break down as fast as our all-purpose soil. Once the plants are in the container, the bamboo stake is removed and any growth is tied to their metal support structure. My main goal through the winter is to get as much height or length as I can. If we watch as the season goes on, there are a few things I can do to speed them up or slow them down with temperature, plant hormones, and selective pinching or thinning out. We can use what is called a positive diff, or temperature differential. This is when daytime is warmer than nighttime. We get this naturally, especially when the sun shines through the glass of the greenhouse, but we know that the plant is more responsive to this the first 2 hours after sunrise. We can take advantage of this using our environmental control system, Argus, which knows exactly what time sunrise is at our location, and from January through early March, I have the temperature set to increase 10 degrees for those first 2 hours of daylight. Research suggests that this is taking advantage of the plant's circadian rhythm to optimize photosynthesis and nutrient uptake. We also use gibberellins. This is a naturally occurring plant hormone that, if applied in concentrated form to the top 3 or 4 inches of growth, the cells elongate or stretch further, allowing me to get to the top of their frames even faster. When talking about the ways our Chrysanthemum Festival evolves, sometimes those evolutions are driven from a design perspective. We have those new forms that are exciting to see, then sometimes those evolutions are driven from a greenhouse production perspective. If you're a longtime guest at Longwood, you recognize that every year we display column cascades in our main conservatory. They're an important piece of Chrysanthemum Festival because this is a space we don't typically have plants on display. When you walk the festival this year, you may notice these columns look a little different. That's because behind the scenes, we've changed the way we grow these forms. So I'm going to show you both methods and explain the reason behind making this change. In the past, these were planted in early January in 12-inch round pots, 3 plants per pot, and pinched in late January to give us 3 main stems per plant. We would stake those plants with bamboo stakes and allow them to grow tall until the first week of May, when I can look at the forecast and see the danger of a hard freeze has passed. Then it's time to get them moved outside and trained to these metal A-frame panels. The container is placed at the top of the frame, and those 5-foot tall plants are bent downward. There's a lot of tricks of the trade to get this done. The first step is to stop watering the plant for 2 or 3 days. I may leave on a Friday and tell the weekend staff not to water all weekend long. The plants get scary, wilty dry by the time I come in Monday morning, and this makes the stems a little flexible. Even with drying down, the plants stiffen up in cool temperatures overnight. So we would wait until 9 a.m. when the sun has cleared the trees in the mum field, it's a little warmer, and we move a few plants outside. It seems silly, but if we grab a hold of the stem right at the base and just hold on for 12 or 15 seconds, your body heat can warm that section of the stem, which makes it a little more flexible. Then the next step is really freaky. We take a hold of the stem right at the base and give it a good twist. As you start, you can feel tension, then at a certain point, you feel the stem give way, or you may even hear a crack. That's breaking the xylem and phloem, the tubes inside the stem that transport water and nutrients up and down. You can't do this with every plant, but if you stop before you break the outside of the stem, a mum will recover from that. With these cascades, we would crack the stem 2 or 3 spots right at the base, and then slowly, carefully, you can turn that whole 5-foot plant and bend it down to the frame. These cascade frames have a very sharp angle to get over. So if we have a stem we're worried might break if we tie it over the edge, we can use mum yoga. We'll leave it to relax under its own weight for most of the day, then we can take it down a little more and a little more until after a couple of days we've got it tied totally flat to the frame. Then all summer, the plant wants to grow up toward the light. My crew and I, every other week, will come through and tie every single stem downward so they point toward the ground, which takes a lot of time. We talk at Longwood that horticulturally speaking, Chrysanthemum Festival is the most labor-intensive season. More time goes into producing the plants for this season than any other. A couple of years ago, I started with the help of my manager and coworkers examining everything we do all year long to see if there were ways to work smarter instead of harder. And we came up with an idea that if it worked, would be the single largest step we could take in labor savings. After 2 years of trials and discussions with design and display staff, we had new curved metal frames constructed that have a window box-like container at the base. And there are a couple of reasons for that. A lot of what I do with all of the cascade forms I grow is directing the plant's energy where I need it. You'll remember with the old frames, I needed 3 main stems or leaders per plant. With this wider window box, I have space for more plants per container and can grow with 1 stem per plant. With all the plant's energy going into 1 leader, the plants reach their final height much quicker. The old frames were 5 feet long, and some years it was a struggle to get to the base of those frames. This year, we were not only able to reach that 5-foot mark, but 2 additional feet earlier in the season than I ever had before. So we had a 2-foot extension piece made for our metal structure that's removable. If I have the year the designer picks a shorter cultivar, or if Mother Nature isn't cooperating and I can't reach that final height, we can just remove the extension piece and still have a gorgeous display. The other reason I pushed for having the container at the base is because of that summer season, when we would bend all those individual stems downward. Growing this new way, the plant is growing upward in the direction we need, and it's a whole lot quicker to come through and tack those stems to the frame. One concern we had with placing the container at the base is that now this would be visible. The way we used to grow these, the container was hidden up at the top with the mum grown over the front side. We discussed a decorative covering or planting an ivy or some other trailing plant to drape over the container, which is still doable in the future, but we decided for this year I would grow mums down the front of the container, which is 12 inches tall. In total, with growing the plant down 1 foot of container and the 2-foot extension piece at the top, these pieces are 8 feet tall. That's 3 feet larger than I had ever grown in the past. But the question remained, were we right that I could save time by making this change? After tracking our time with each method, we saw time savings at every step along the way. When I look at the time comparison, what really stands out to me is that spring and first half of the summer. There are 52 hours that I did not have to spend doing that crazy cracking and bend down, and then a massive time savings during the pinching and tying season, when all those stems had to be tied down toward the ground. At the end of the season, on this one form, our crew has saved 445 hours. Not only does this change make us more aligned with Longwood's core value of fiscal responsibility, but we're also being more environmentally sustainable. When growing the old way, it would take 8 of those individual panels to go around 1 column. These new forms are grown in halves, only needing 50 plants. This translates into using a smaller amount of every input through the process. I'm using fewer fiber pots, not as much soil, I'm watering less and not going through as much fertilizer and the green wire we tie with, and on and on. These forms also take up a smaller footprint in the greenhouse, allowing space for additional crops. Another evolution this year is one you won't notice when walking the display. Similar to our columns, we've changed the way we grow our hanging baskets, but those changes don't affect the final product. These forms are grown in 18-inch hanging baskets. The old way was to pot 18 plants per basket in early January. Like the columns, being grown up bamboo stakes through the winter, then the first week of May we would go through that same bending and tying process to get it bent down to their metal legs. This year, we let the plants stay in their 5-inch pots until mid-April when they've reached their final height. Instead of going through the bend down process, At this point, we laid the root balls sideways and planted them in the basket with the stems already heading in the direction we need. When we reach summer, if I've done my job right, all the plants have reached their final heights. They're at the tops of their spirals, columns, and cloud forms. All the baskets are potted up and they've reached the bottom of their legs. Our main goal for the summer is to cover the surface area of each of the frames. The plants grow up toward the light, and if we stay on schedule, each form is tied down every other week. We use little green electrical wires to hold the plant down to their stainless steel and chicken wire structures, and pinch the growing tip out of each shoot to encourage more branching for the next tie down. We aim for open spots, crisscrossing stems over the top of each other until the last week of June, when the plants have filled in all the gaps and you can't see much light through the frame. This brings us to a really exciting time of year, shearing season. Once the frames have filled in, we have battery-operated shears that we come through every other week and shear for shape. With a steady hand, we're clipping off the growing tip of each stem, each round staying one node or 2 leaves above the last cut. This doubles the number of stems with each shear, which ultimately means more flowers. The plants really take shape, and you can start to see what they'll look like on display. There are a couple of things that happen throughout the year, but more heavily during the summer season. One is pest control. There are a whole host of pests and diseases that chrysanthemums are susceptible to. We have to watch out for aphids, thrips, whiteflies, spider mites, mealybugs. I get Japanese beetles, lace bugs, leaf miners, caterpillars love them, grasshoppers. I've had slugs before. Of course, deer eat them. They're susceptible to powdery mildew, leaf spot, root rots like Pythium and Phytophthora, fusarium wilt, not only chrysanthemum-specific viruses, but also some tobacco and tomato viruses, aster yellows, certain rusts and blights, botrytis, crown gall. There's a stunt viroid that even keeps it too small and we can't get it as big as we need, and many more. Because of this, Longwood uses an integrated pest management approach, using many forms of control. Since especially mums are such a high-profile crop, our plant health care division comes through once a week to scout for any issues that might pop up. They look at a wide selection of plants throughout the greenhouse and send a scouting report that tells me if they found any pests, on which crop, and how bad an infestation there is. We've moved to using a beneficial insect program in our chrysanthemum houses. So every other week, we get a shipment of good bugs that go hunting for the bad bugs. If I have some species that go after aphids, some for spider mites, others for thrips, and sometimes mealybug destroyers. Some are eggs shipped in little packets that we hang on branches of the plant. And as the eggs hatch, they come out of little pinholes in the pouch and go hunting. Others are shipped in canisters packed in a sawdust-like material that we sprinkle around on the plants. Based on the scouting reports, I know which areas of the greenhouse to focus on with the release. You can see in this video just how active some of these are. They're very good at their job. When it comes to disease control, prevention really is the best tool we have. In our day-to-day work, a crew member can pinch and tie or shear one whole form, but before moving to the next, we use hand sanitizer and an ethyl alcohol-based solution to sanitize any tools. I use the same solution to sanitize any work surfaces, like potting benches and soil bins, and between seasons, all our metal forms and green wire gets sanitized before reusing the next year. Another focus throughout the year is fertilization. Chrysanthemums are heavy feeders. Growing them in containers is a little different than having them in the landscape, so in the greenhouse, we're feeding more often, especially since we're pushing these cascades to such incredible heights. We fertilize 5 days a week, alternating between 2 types of fertilizer. 4 days a week, I feed 300 parts per million 20-10-20, which is a common all-purpose feed, and 1 day a week, I use 250 parts per million 17-4-17, then clear water on the weekends to wash out any salts. Those numbers may seem confusing. 300 parts per million is the concentration of feed that I'm mixing in my tank, while 20-10-20 refers to the ratio of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the mix. But why the 2 different fertilizers? It has to do with the type of nitrogen in each. The high nitrogen content of the 20-10-20 helps me get the strong leafy growth we need to cover these larger structures. but it's acidifying. The formula contains ammoniacal nitrogen, which lowers the pH of the soil over time. 17417 is neutral and a pure water blend, meaning it doesn't cause a drastic shift in pH and counteracts the acidifying effect of the 20-10-20. We are alternating fertilizers, but feeding at such a high rate, it still drives down the pH. So I have a volunteer that comes in every Tuesday and takes soil samples. Each plant gets sampled every second or third week. Then our research staff and volunteers run an in-house pH and EC test. The EC, or electrical conductivity, that you see here in the right-hand column is a measure of the dissolved salts and ions in the soil. It's an economical way of estimating the fertilizer level in the soil. If my numbers are in the high 2s or right at 3, we're pretty good. But if they drop much more than that, like we had here in September, I increase our fertilization. With numbers too high, you risk salts burning the soil and would use more clear water. The pH I aim for with these cascade mums is 6.5. The reason for constantly monitoring this number you can see in this chart with the pH across the top. With numbers in the optimal range, or that yellow zone, you have a good amount of each nutrient available to the plant. As our test results get lower and start to move into the orange territory, even with enough fertilizer, those nutrients get bound to the soil and less is available to the plant. When our numbers start to get too low, we apply liquid lime to bring the pH back up into range. We talked about chrysanthemums being short-day plants and flowering in the fall, but our Chrysanthemum Festival starts early enough in the year that under natural day length, we wouldn't have flowers yet. To get around this problem, we use what is called black cloth. Our greenhouses have a canvas material around the perimeter of the house that I can program to shut at 4:30 p.m., making the greenhouse dark until opening at 7 o'clock the next morning. This is enough hours of darkness to trick the plants into thinking the days are short, and they move into producing flower buds. Through trials we've done at Longwood, we know how long it takes each cultivar from the start of black cloth until we have open flowers. Most of our cascade cultivars have an 8 or 9 week response time. So since chrysanthemum installs started October 13th this year, we counted backwards to know that I had to stop shearing and start the black cloth process on August 11th. If everything works right, I have flowers just in time for install. We get a schedule from display staff in the conservatory, so I know which pieces to deliver which days, and I get to use all kinds of cool equipment for transport and installation. For our arch this year, you can see on the right that we grew this in 3 pieces, the legs separate from the cap. The legs are open at the top, enabling us to conceal the shiny metal containers of the cap. Because of its location on display, you can see in the video we had to use a jib attachment on our forklift to reach even higher than its 14-foot limit. We placed a great big metal plate under the arch for a sturdy base, and if you look really close when you see the display, you'll notice the metal shop ran a cable from the top of the arch to the roof of the conservatory to keep the whole thing from toppling over. Our hanging baskets are grown on tripods with the legs spread out like an octopus. This allows enough sunlight to make sure I get lots of flowers all the way to the base of the form. For transport, I fold the legs up onto their pallets and forklift them onto this massive stake body truck. They get moved into place in the conservatory and lifted off their tripod stands so we can gather all the legs underneath and create the 6-foot spheres you see on display. For a lot of our pieces, we use poles to lift from cable loops attached to their growing containers, placing them on little skateboards to ride right up to their spot in the conservatory. Over a 2-week time period, the production and display staff have everything installed and beautiful for display. When looking through pictures of displays past, you can see how things evolve over time. Through collaboration with staff all across the organization, we continue to reimagine this season that is full of color and creativity while continuing this Longwood tradition, staying true to Pierre Dupont's vision. I may be the one in the greenhouse from day to day, but it does take a village. I get to collaborate with team members from all across Longwood, and Chrysanthemum Festival would not be what it is without any one of them, so I just wanted to take a second to thank all of them, especially my manager and crew. A lot of them are in the room, past and present. And thank you all for coming this morning for a quick look at all that happens behind the scenes.